we begin this Wednesday edition of the SportsMax Zone with CONCACAF Nations League football on the eve of the 2023-2024 semi-finals. The first semi-final sees Jamaica's Reggae Boyz tackling reigning champions and hosts USA at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. SportsMax will have live coverage beginning at 6 p.m. 7 ECT. Now the second semi-final will be between Mexico and Panama. The Reggae Boyz enter Thursday's contest without several key players, including in-form Aston Villa winger Leon Bailey, who was omitted for disciplinary reasons. Influential attacker Demarai Gray, as well as Shamar Nicholson, who scored 3 goals in the quarter-final tie against Canada, are out on card suspension. West Ham forward Mikel Antonio, along with defenders Ethan Pinnock and Amari Bell, are also out injured. Let's now hear from Reggae Boyz head coach Hall Grimson, who says they have done all they can since arriving in Texas.
All the facilities are top class, and we have tried to do what we can in these 2 days to prepare the team for such a, first of all, important but also a difficult match against US.
Meanwhile, skipper Andre Blake says the boys are feeling positive going into the clash.
Make use of the 2 days that we had. As coach said, it's really good pitch to get a proper training session in, and the vibe in the camp is really good. Obviously, we know it's going to be a tough game, but we look forward to it, and we're going to go out there and give our best.
Joining us this afternoon to preview the clash is former Trinidad and Tobago defender and SportsMax's leading striker, Brent Sancho. Good afternoon, Brent. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, Mariah. How are you?
I'm doing fine. A bit rainy here in Kingston, but of course we move along. So we're going to start talking about this Jamaica, of course, mouth-watering fixture. And from the onset, based on my introduction, we can start by saying a lot of key players will be missing. Brent, firstly, how does this affect what we see from the Jamaica Reggae Boyz?
Look, I think it's a terrific opportunity still for Jamaica to try and win these 2 one-off matches. There's obviously a lot to unpack when you talk about the types of injuries, suspensions, and of course self-inflicted injury through the suspension from 2 of the players. So it is a challenge. And when you look at the type of players as well, Mariah, that has been or not available for the head coach tomorrow night, it's a big blow for Jamaica. The players that get some goals, the players that makes things happen for Jamaica, and the high-quality players that make Jamaica such a competitive team in the CONCACAF region. So it's a lot to ask for. It's a big ask for Jamaica team. But I'm quite sure, and you can already hear through the press conferences, etc., that obviously he's trying to let the players that are there focus on the task at hand. And he has to fill the camp with optimism, fill the entire situation with the right sort of positivity. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about 2 one-off football matches, possibly for Jamaica to go on and win the Nations League. But as I said, it's a tall ask with all of the players that are missing.
And what are your thoughts on the quality of the players that will be suiting up for the Reggae Boyz against this USA team?
No, look, there are some quality players still within the squad. I do fancy the likes of Blow, whether they play him in the midfield or he plays at the back. Of course, goalkeeper Blake is an extraordinary goalkeeper, and arguably for me the best goalkeeper in the region, in CONCACAF region. But I think the real issue, and to get more pointed about this, is the attacking side of things. When you look at, of course, no Leon Bailey, no Damani Gray, no Antonio, that's massive. Those are the players that get you goals. Those are the players that put Jamaica into dangerous situations. Those are the players that make something out of nothing. And I think that's the fear, that the fact that those players that are not there, where's Jamaica goals going to come from? They do have some of their challenges defensively. I do still think there is some frailty in the wing-back positions and possibly in the middle of the park, particularly they have addressed a bit. But outside of that, when you look at the offensive players that are not there, I know we're focusing on the players that are there. It's hard to ask a young Dickerson to fill in for a Leon Bailey, and it's not that we don't hope that Dickinson could get to that sort of level, or Dixon could get a sort of, but Leon Bailey's on fire in Aston Villa. Of course, the Manny Gray is exceptional in CONCACAF football, and so is Antonio. So I think it's difficult to ask the ones that are there to pull the shoes of the ones that are not there. But the talent is there, but to compete against the top four in the Nations League and CONCACAF might be a big ask for some of the kids that are there now.
Yeah, and Brent Sancho, you didn't call the name Shamar Nicholson, who has scored 6 goals in the CONCACAF Nations League, including 3 in the quarterfinal tie against Canada. So he will be a big miss for the Reggae Boys as well. I want to take you up on the Leon Bailey point, though, because there has been a lot of discussion in the bars, on the street, on the radio stations here in Jamaica about whether he should have been given a financial fine as opposed to being suspended, not being able to play what is an extremely important set of matches for the Reggae Boys. And I want to get an understanding of how you feel about the way Jaime Grimson has dealt with this situation. And let us say we are assuming that what we've heard from Coach Hal Grimson is the genuine reason Leon Bailey isn't there, because there have been some suggestions that there is actually more to the story, and we know Craig Butler has put some things out there in the public domain. But I want to get your reaction to the decision by Jaime Grimson.
Well, first and foremost, there are 2 very, very important points that govern football. One is that no man is bigger than the team. And the second one is that all coaches live and die by their decisions. And both things come into play here. When we played in 2006, one of our turning points for qualifiers is when our captain of the team, Dwight York, had also some disciplinary infringements, and he was dealt with in front of the team by the then coach Leo Ben Hacker. What happened afterwards is we went on a run that saw us qualify for the World Cup, and I've mentioned that to suggest that obviously with team chemistry and team dynamics, it's so important that coaches get things right in terms of how they make these sorts of decisions. He could have easily allowed Dwight York back into a situation, but he made sure that he chided him, and he made sure that it was done in a way that everyone in the team understood that no man is bigger than the team. Yes, I fully understand that a lot of people across the Caribbean, the region that is rooting for Jamaica and in various diasporas that believe that maybe he should be playing. But you always have to think that there's a certain team dynamics that comes to this. Yes, you might allow him to play, but what happens to that? What happens to the team chemistry? What happens to the dynamics? And look, you could have easily allowed him to play and have a fine, but the coach is the one that's there, that's in the middle of all of this dynamic. So he would have a very good understanding as to why and why not. And I go back to the point that I made when we started, when you asked me the question, Ricardo. The coaches live and die by their decisions. And this is one decision that the coach will have to live or die by.
Yeah, fair enough. I also want to get your thoughts on Dejon Whisper-Richards being left out of this squad, and whether you are surprised by the decision, especially given that Leon Bailey was not selected. Demarai Gray and Shamar Nicholson we knew would be out on card suspension. Yes, Michael Antonio had initially been selected, but we also knew that he was just coming back from injury, and you're never really sure when it comes to Michael Antonio. And in many ways, well, not in many ways, but Dejon Richards has been part of this setup since last summer. He played in the Gold Cup. He played in the early stages of the Nations League. And so from that standpoint, are you surprised that he was not given a pick for this trip?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised that he wasn't selected. I know the coach gave an excuse, not an excuse, but a reason that he wanted him to stay and settle with his club, which he felt was more valuable for the player. And I just wonder, when you look at some of these events, as to where this tournament is valued by the coaching staff, by the JFF, whether or not it's a situation where it's a prep for the bigger picture in their minds, which is a Copa America, and of course the World Cup qualifiers to come in June. So maybe that's the situation, but it's a strange one. I would have probably looked at as a selection as an opportunity to get him to play at national team level for a game of these magnitude.
Yeah, so Brent, let me ask you then, because I'm glad you mentioned the reason that Coach Hal Grimson gave. Do you believe that Dejon Richards playing under 21 games for Chelsea at this point, of course, training in the Chelsea setup as well, is more valuable than him being part of the Reggae Boys squad? And I would suggest likely to play if he had been selected at the semi-finals of the CONCACAF Nations League against the best teams in this region, because whether you win or lose on Thursday night, then you have a second game either against Panama or Mexico.
Well, it really comes down to, obviously, the player and coach discussion. From a player perspective, if he feels that he's just settling in, he's just getting into a rhythm, moving all the way across to the UK and settling into that football and of course, all that comes with the environment. And at the end of the day, Ricardo, the players' the welfare and development comes way ahead of anything else. And if there's a feeling by the player that he wants to settle in and do that, because I don't think that this was a sole decision by the coach. I think it may have been a conversation between the coach and the player, and that we won't know. But at the end of the day, I do believe that there is some validity in allowing him to stay and allowing him to settle in and be there. But at the same point in time, I saw if the coach really needed him, he would have suggested that he comes. And I know, looking at all the absentees that are not there, that are not part of the game, maybe there's a case for it. So I suspect there was a conversation. As I said, it is difficult to settle into those sorts of situations, and he's just getting into a rhythm of games and just settling into his Chelsea career. Of course, the season finishes quite shortly at the end of April into May, and he has an entire summer to be with the Jamaica national setup. So maybe that's how they view it. And as I said, 9 times out of 10, that's a player and a manager conversation.
Yeah, Brent, we spent so much time speaking about the players who will not be there in tomorrow's match and a lot about the Reggae Boys, but this USA squad is a pretty good one. I know that they're on a 2-match losing streak. They've not lost 3 matches in a row since 2015, so they will be desperate to avoid that. But this is a quality team. Pulisic is there, who was player of the last Nations League tournament in CONCACAF. Weston McKennie is in the squad. He was the 2019-2020 player of the tournament for the Nations League. And all round, they have a lot of quality. This is not going to be easy for the Reggae Boys, even if they were at full strength.
Yeah, and of course, Coach Berhalter has a point to prove. Yeah. He will be coming, of course, to do his utmost best to dispel any the naysayers and the doubters that have certainly started to creep into this year's program. I think this is a statement tournament for the US. I believe that they would do not just this tournament. I think this tournament for the US team is also a platform for the Copa as well. And they're looking from where they sit to start with winning the Nations League and then doing exceedingly well in the Copa. So this tournament is an important stepping stone for their next step. So I do think they're going to come out with all guns blazing tomorrow. And the game really hinges tomorrow night on whether or not the Jamaican team can be, of course, very stringent in defense, very structured in defense, very disciplined in defense. I don't think, Ricardo and Mariah, they can give up the amount of goal-scoring opportunity that they did against Canada in that game in Canada. I think they have to be a lot more resolute. They have to be very much more determined in the first half. And they certainly need to keep the US fans and the US atmosphere out of the game and try to kill the game off and look to, of course, get a result somehow in the second half of the game.
Yeah, quickly, Brent, because it's interesting you speak about the atmosphere and trying to get that out of the picture as early as possible. The away record for the Reggae Boys in Nations League play has been quite good. They have won all 3 away matches and they have scored at least 3 goals in those games, including matches against Grenada, Haiti, and of course the Canada encounter, well documented. So this is not a team that is afraid to play away from home.
No, it's not. And I think a lot of why they've been successful on the road is because they had 3 players in that can create anything from nothing. And I talk about Damani Gray. I talk about, of course, Mikel Antonio and what he does. I know Leon Bailey has had a lukewarm season with Jamaica, but it still does not ignore the fact that he is a talented player and he can produce on his day. because of that element and because they've had a heroic Blake in goal. I think those factors are why they've done so well on the road and they've done well. But we've taken away one of those factors and those three players that are not there anymore. So I do think that changes the paradigm a bit. It does not necessarily change the positivity that I'm sure the coaching staff is going to try to put into the team, mentioning what you just mentioned and how well they've done on the road, how well they've done when they face adversity. So I'm very sure that is kind of language that's going to be heard throughout the training room and, of course, the hotel and the team hotel. So if they can somehow find a way utilizing those things and utilizing that as a strength to get a result, then maybe they have a chance. As I said, Ricardo, it's a one-off game. And once they stick to the game plan and do well, I think they do have a chance.
Yeah, very much the case. Brent, we will be speaking about this a lot more on Friday, I suspect. But a quick word on how the Soca Warriors are preparing ahead of their playoff encounter against Canada on Saturday. Massive win against the USA to close the quarterfinal stage of the Nations League. Although they lost the tie, beating the USA 2-1 at the Hayes de Crawford Stadium would have been a tremendous moral boost. And now they come up against a Canada side that can be susceptible, as we saw against the Reggae Boyz, and I suspect there must be a level of belief within the Trinidad and Tobago setup heading into this game.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a certain level of belief for the Trinidad and Tobago team. I think Coach Angus Eve dubbed it David versus Goliath, and Angus has done a tremendous job in using the psychological effect to get to his players. And let's be honest, the players have performed for him. I think for Angus Eve's perspective, he's seen the good and the really bad from Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, the highlights from the US game where they had a tremendous performance, they won that game. But then they went to Curacao and it was a shambolic performance against the men from Curacao. So he's seen it all. And the question is which Trinidad and Tobago team will show up. Yes, there's a lot of confidence from this particular result, but he cannot afford any sort of resemblances of what transpired in Curacao. And because of that, I think how he engages this game, how he approaches this game will be critical because he must be sitting there as a coach and thinking to himself, he will only hope that heroic performance against the USA shows up against Canada.
Yeah, that 5-3 against Curacao, if you're a neutral, it was quite a treat to watch. That much I can tell you, goal after goal. Brent Sancho, as usual, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and we'll chat again, I am sure, on Friday as we review that Jamaica versus USA encounter and the other semi-final, Mexico versus Panama, and look ahead in more detail to the Trinidad and Tobago versus Canada game, which comes up on Saturday. Thanks very much, Brent.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Yeah, and remember as well that the Nations League will close on Sunday with the championship match and the third place playoff. So regardless of what happens on Thursday night, the Reggae Boyz will be back in action on Sunday. For Trinidad and Tobago, it's just one game, that playoff against Canada. Remember, you can see it all on your home of champions starting at 6 p.m., 7 ECT on Thursday. In fact, we're going to have to get out of the SportsMax Zone 5 minutes ahead of our usual 6 o'clock scheduled time so that we can go to Arlington, Texas for semi-final 1, Jamaica versus USA. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone.